Thank you for joining us today for this Destination Spotlight. We're going to be beginning in just a moment. If you'd like, you can tell us where you're joining us from in the chat function that should be either at the top or bottom of your screen on Zoom. Hello to Barbara in Nashville. Thank you for joining us today. Oh, I see Amanda is here from Oregon. Thank you for joining us. Oh, Paul in Worcester, that's my neck of the woods. Thank you for joining us today. Oh, we got Bonnie in Saskatchewan. Ursula in Austin, Texas. Thanks for hopping on with the call for us today. Oh, we got Robert in Florida. Hi, Susan. Thanks for joining us from Montana today. Oh, I see Wilmington, Delaware. Susan. Oh, we have Melody in San Diego. Wow, we have a lot of folks joining us today. Oh, we have Annie in Quebec, Canada. Thank you for joining us from Canada. Oh, we have John in Iowa City. All right, Charlie from Windsor, Ontario. Beautiful. Oh, Roy from St. Petersburg, Florida. Thank you all so much for joining us today. Hello and welcome again to this installment of our Destination Spotlight series. Today we're going to be shining a spotlight on Scandinavia. My name is Nilsson Schilling. I work out of the Boston office for Go Ahead, and I'm very excited to be joining you today. Now, you might have recognized that piece of music we were playing as you entered. That was by Norwegian composer Edvard Grieg, and we thought it would be a good way to begin our session for today. Now, as we begin, I do want to touch on a few housekeeping items just to let you know that today we're using what is called a webinar format. So what that means for you is that your phone or your camera and your microphone are disabled. So we can't see or hear you, but we do want to hear from you. So if you'd like, please feel free to enter any questions that you have in the Q&A box in Zoom, or if you're on Facebook, in the comment section, and we'll try to take as many of your questions as we can. We've also gotten some questions that you sent to us before the presentation began that we've worked into the presentation. Now with that, let's begin. So today we're going to be talking about Scandinavia, and from seafaring histories to fantastic fjords, there is a lot to love about Scandinavia and the Nordic countries. Today we will be focusing on Norway's incredible green cliffs and blue waters, and then we'll set sail from Oslo to Denmark's waterside capital. From there, we'll focus on the remaining Nordic capitals, Stockholm and Helsinki, two of the world's most livable cities, and explore their maritime pasts as well as modern architecture. And before we jump into that, we do want to talk briefly about the Go Ahead difference. So here at Go Ahead, we believe that the best way to learn about the world is to experience it. And we strive to open the world through education and create travel experiences that allow you to interact with a country the way that a local does. We take care of all of the little details for you, ensuring that as travel is opening back up, everything is arranged for you so that you can have an incredible and safe experience. Between hand-picked hotels and meals, to on-tour transportation, and personalized flight itineraries to get you to your trip, Go Ahead cultivates unique and unforgettable experiences for our travelers. But what I think really brings our tours to life is our local guides and, of course, our expert tour directors. And I'm very excited to be joined today by one of our best. Per is going to be joining us today to talk about Scandinavia. And Per, would you mind introducing yourself and telling our guests about your time leading tours with Go Ahead?
Sure. It's a pleasure to be here, and welcome to everybody, of course. My name is Per, and I'm a Swede. And I've been doing Go Ahead since 2005, and I'm quite familiar with all the Nordic countries. And I'm really, really pleased to be able to talk about them today for you. So I'm looking forward to this session very much.
Wonderful. Now, Per and I have both been using, the word Scandinavia as well as Nordic countries, and you may or may not know that there is a difference. But today we're going to start by taking a little poll from the folks that are joining us. What countries make up Scandinavia? So please feel free to answer these questions. We want to see what your thoughts are. So Denmark, Norway, Sweden, Finland, and Iceland. Norway, Sweden, and Finland. Denmark, Norway, Sweden, and Finland, Denmark, Norway, and Sweden, or Norway, Sweden, Finland, and Iceland. So we're going to wait just a moment while we see some more of these answers come in. I'm curious to know if people will get it right or if they'll have trouble with it like I did.
Yes, you did.
All right. So let's see. We still have a few more people answering, and what I see here is the winner so far is Denmark, Norway, Sweden, and Finland. Now, Per, would you set the record straight and tell us what is the correct answer?
I will. And it's actually alternative number 4. Denmark, Norway, and Sweden is the right answer. And the reason for that is our history, our geographical situation, language-wise, and we from time to time being together and also from time to time being enemies. But Scandinavia is Sweden, Norway, and Denmark.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for giving us that little bit of information. We want to pepper in some more of that kind of content here throughout the presentation. But today, what we're going to be using as our framework as we explore Scandinavia is our flagship itinerary of this region, Scandinavia, the capitals, and the fjords. This is a 14-day tour that we offer, and you travel from west to east, beginning in Bergen, where you'll begin your tour, and then you'll fly to Norway or to Oslo. From Oslo, you will then travel south by ferry to Copenhagen. And then from Copenhagen, we will fly to Stockholm before moving by ferry to Helsinki. And as we mentioned, Helsinki, a Nordic capital, not a Scandinavian one.
That's right.
So that is the framework that we're going to be using for our talk today. But let's talk a little bit about Norway. And Per, I was hoping you could share a little bit of some fast travel facts with us before we hop into Bergen.
Absolutely. And Norway is, if we see from a surface point of view, is one of the largest, maybe number 6 in Europe. And it has also the longest land coast in the whole Europe. And economically, very, very strong country because of the fishing industry, because of the natural gas, and because of the oil. And it's not a large country. It hosts maybe 5 million people or something like that. And yeah, I think that's it as a presentation for Norway. Yeah.
Wonderful. So the first city that we visit when we go to Norway is Bergen. And can you tell us a little bit about what our travelers can expect there?
Absolutely. First of all, Bergen is the second largest city of Norway with about 285,000 inhabitants. And what we see here on the pictures is something called Bryggen. It means the wharf, and it's the old Hanseatic area of Bergen. And it's very colorful, mostly wooden houses, even if there are some brick houses we see here on this picture. And the area is filled by workshops, by regular shops, restaurants, bars, and it's just on the seaside, which we see here. And whole Bergen is surrounded by 7 mountains. Bergen means actually mountains in Norwegian language. And one of the 7 mountains is Fløyen, and that's the second highest. And you can, when you have free time in Bergen, you can go up by funicular. It takes about 4 or 5 minutes. We see the funicular here on the picture, and you have a beautiful view from top of the mountain, like this. You see the fjords, and you see a lake, and you see partly the whole city of Bergen. Yes, it's well worth to do that on your free time. And Mount Fløyen is just, in the center of Bergen, really.
Wow, that is really beautiful. And aside from the natural beauty that surrounds Bergen, there's also cultural history. And one of the stops along our tour is the Fontoff Stave Church. Can you tell us a little bit about what makes this site unique?
Absolutely. These stave churches, there are a bunch of them in Norway, and they were from the Viking era. The Viking era took place more or less during 300 years, let's say from 900 until 1200 AD. And this Fontoff Stave Church, what we see here is actually a replica, because the original one was burned down in 1992, but they made a new one in just 5 years. It's perfectly well done. So it is like the original one, yes. And we have that included on our sightseeing tour. Absolutely.
It's very beautiful, very beautiful.
It is.
Now, part of the reason that a lot of folks want to go to Norway, and I know it's something that interests me, is viewing the fjords. And I know that we have a whole day on our flagship itinerary that's dedicated to going to fjord country. And I am hoping that you can talk to us about everything that people can expect during that day.
Yeah, sure. We start early in the morning with the train ride from Bergen to Voss. It's about 1 hour and 20 minutes. It's a very scenic tour, like we see here on this picture. And then we are coming to Voss. We change from train to bus, and then we come to Gudvangen. And on Gudvangen, we will enter a small boat taking us out in the fjord between Gudvangen and Flåm. It's about 2 hours. I maybe should explain what a fjord is. And a fjord is not the lake, it's not the river, it's an inlet into the country. So it has a dead end. The water is brackish, it's both salty and fresh water. Water is very cold, but still a lot of fishes are living there. And the fjord is always surrounded by steep mountains. And we're going to see and experience one of the most incredible fjords we have in the whole country. And this is what we see here is Aurland, the main town of the fjord area where we are this day. And we end up in something called Flåm. This is Flåm, where we'll have time for lunch. Really, really cozy little place. An old fishing village, but after we've been in Flåm, we will take a train ride, and it's this railway was constructed during 20 years, from the 1920 until 1941, so it was opened up actually during World War II. And the train we go here is just about 20 miles train ride, but still it's so scenic. We are climbing up from Flåm to something called Myrdal. And we do certain stops, for example, at a very impressive waterfall called Kjosfossen. And after the Flåm's railway, we take a regular train back to Bergen again. It's a full day, and definitely, according to our clients, one of the very, very highlights on this whole tour. It's so beautiful. Very, very beautiful.
Oh, yes. I mean, just the pictures of the fjords, it makes me really want to go.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Well, let's continue on our journey. The next stop for us is going to be Oslo. And Oslo, can you tell us a little bit more about what folks can expect once they land there?
Sure. It's the capital of Norway, and it's the largest city as well. It's around 550,000 inhabitants, but it's growing fast. It's one of the fastest growing cities in whole Europe. And it's quite a modern city. And what we see here is the Opera House. It was opened up 2007. And it's constructed like a ski slope, as we see here. Very beautiful angle, by the way, to see it from here. And we are definitely past it when we have our sightseeing tour, right in the center of Oslo. And here you see a little bit of the modern part of Oslo. And what we see in the background is also something called Holmenkollen, which is a ski jump area up to the left of this building. Of this picture, sorry, but it's still quite a modern city, Oslo. Yes. And what we have here, sorry to interrupt you. This is the town hall from the 1930s, and we are going to visit that indoor. And it's also a very important building because the Nobel Peace Prize ceremony is taking place there in December every year. And this picture is taken from the backside of the town hall. It's taken from an area called Aker Brygge, full of commuter boats out to the islands. It's also restaurants, bars, really, really a nice area to spend some time in. Absolutely, yeah.
Wonderful. And in Oslo, I know that we have a few stops built in to experience some wonderful artwork, and one of them is a whole park dedicated to sculpture. Can you share a little bit about this park?
Absolutely. It's called the Vigeland Sculpture Park, and we do, as you said, Nelson, we have it included on our sightseeing tour, and we walk through this park. It's about half a mile to walk, but well worth to do it. Gustav Vegeland is a sculptor. He lived from the middle of the 19th century and until the 1940s. And he is one of the most important sculptor and also very special person. He only sculpted naked people, men, women, children, and many of his sculptures are collected in this park. Amazing what we see when we do this walking tour together with our local guide.
Great. And there's another famous artist whose work is showcased in Oslo, which is Edvard Monk. And I understand that they've created a new museum to house his works.
That's right. That's right. Edvard Monk was living more or less during the same era as Gustav Vegeland. And they moved recently, actually this year, they moved his old museum to a new building right in the center of Oslo. I haven't been there yet, so I'm so eager to come there. But one of his most important pictures are the scream, which you can see here to the left. There are 4 versions of the scream, and one of them is here in the Munch Museum. It's really great, and I'm so eager to get there and see the new building also. Yeah, the new museum.
Mm-hmm. Now, Per, as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, we did ask for some questions before the presentation began, and so we've included some of them here.
Okay.
And we've also been getting some questions during the presentation about weather and things like that. So when is the best time to travel to Scandinavia?
Well, if we see it from a weather point of view, I would like to say that from mid-May until end of September is the best time of traveling to Scandinavia. Yes. And I know that many people, when they are coming to Scandinavia and the Nordic countries, they are expecting a little bit chilly maybe, but the last 6-7 summers we had, it's been up to 90-95 degrees sometimes.
Wow.
So it's the opposite actually when people are coming. Wow, this is hot.
Yes.
Of course, I can't guarantee that it's going to be like that also in the future, but usually we have really nice summers. And if you look into rainy cities in Europe, you can see that Bergen has, according to the statistic, Bergen has around 300 rainy days a year, but it's not really truth, because even if it's raining 35-40 seconds, then they registered as a rainy day. So it's not really true, but sure, it's raining sometimes in Bergen, and it can rain in the other cities as well. But the climate is nice. And,
I have sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to say I have a few follow-up questions. I had someone, Cindy on Facebook, asked, what are the temperatures like in October?
Right now, I mean, I'm in Sweden now, and right now I guess we have around 55-60 at the moment. So
okay.
it drops down. It drops down in October. Sure, but you can still have a good time. Absolutely, in October.
Yeah. And you were mentioning that Marilyn asked, what are the seasonal weather temperatures in Scandinavia? So you said it can still get rather hot in the summer. What are the other seasons like?
Well, are we talking about, you mean the winter or spring or something like that? Or?
Yes, yeah.
Well, where I live in the southern part of Sweden, not far away from Copenhagen, actually. And we seldom have snow here. Very, very rarely we have snow. It might could be dropped down below the freeze point, but not really, not very often actually. So it could be maybe around in December, I would like to say maybe around 30, 35 degrees or something like that. Yeah, around the freeze point, maybe a little bit above it. Yeah.
Sure.
And
yeah. Go on.
No, I will. Then it's picking up because it gets warmer and warmer when you come to March, April, and October can be nice, but September is usually a really nice month of the year. Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, thank you for answering those questions. We're going to continue our journey now by going to Denmark. So let's talk a bit about some fast travel facts for Denmark.
Yeah, sure. Denmark is not a very large country. It has only one mainland, and that is called Jutland in the west of the country. And that's where Denmark has its only land border to Germany. The rest are islands. There are around 500 islands in Denmark. About half of them are populated. And Copenhagen is situated on the largest island called Sealand. And the second largest island is Fyn, where you find the city of Odense. And that's where Hans Christian Andersen was born in 1805. So a very historical place also. And the two biggest industries in Denmark, it's the shipping. You might heard about Maersk. You might see the containers down in the ports. And the second largest is the pork industry. They are exporting a lot of pork to other countries all over.
Well, Per, I know that as we were preparing for this, you mentioned to me that you actually spent some time living in Copenhagen, and so I'm excited to talk to you about Copenhagen, and in particular, this picture looks incredible. What are we looking at here?
Sure. First of all, I lived 8 years in Copenhagen, and I'm always really happy to come back there. And what we see here on this picture is something called Nyhavn, Newport in English, and that's the old sailor area, and it's dated back to the 14th, 15th century. Many of the buildings here. It was a very rough area until the 1980s when they cleaned it up and made it really fancy. And it's one of the most popular meeting points today in Copenhagen. And there are restaurants and some restaurants, bars, more restaurants. And by the way, here on the left-hand side, wow, the booth you see, Tikkan Pølser. This is the Danish national meal number 2, hot dogs, served with bread, served with mustard, ketchup, roasted onion, and you can also get the hot dog wrapped in bacon. Very tasteful and very healthy.
Delicious.
Absolutely delicious. Delicious. And you also see here, yeah, I know what you're going to say now. I was thinking of that. Sorry to interrupt you, Nilsson. I was going to say about this boat you see. You can go on a really nice canal ride in Copenhagen, canal and sea ride for an hour and a half. Very accessible, very easy for our clients to do on their own. And it's so nice to see Copenhagen from the water perspective. Copenhagen can be a little bit compared to Amsterdam, if some of you might have been there. There's a lot of canals in Copenhagen, and it's really nice to see Copenhagen from that view, and also the guide in English. But we are jumping over to Little Mermaid here, one of the biggest symbols for Copenhagen and Denmark. It's based on the statue comes from the fairy tale by Hans Christian Andersen. Little Mermaid. The history is that she's fall in love with the prince, and the prince fall in love with her. Their love is impossible. It's a long story, a sad story, but our local guide will tell you more. She's been for decades now in Denmark, but about 10 years ago, they took her away to the World Exhibition in Shanghai. And she didn't like it at all. She missed Denmark too much. She's very happy to be back again. This is, of course, a place and a statue we are visiting on our sightseeing tour, yes.
It's always good to be home.
Always good to be home. Always good to be home. Yes, that's right.
Now, tell us about Rosenborg Castle. This picture is just lovely.
Sure. This is not the largest castle in Denmark at all. We have plenty of them, but this is one of the smaller ones. And the most significant for this castle is that they are keeping the Danish crown jewelries there. And it's also a very beautiful park. This is also included in our sightseeing tour. Our local guide is taking us inside, and we will see a lot more of this, including the crown jewelries. Yes.
And I understand that at one point your son was serving as one of the military guards here, correct?
That's right. He did his military service as a royal guard, and he was guarding outside this castle. Once I came here with a group and was telling my group that he was not very, very comfortable with that. No, even if we liked it too much. So yeah, that's right. That's right. That's a funny story. That's a funny story. Yeah.
Well, we were looking at this lovely architecture, and similarly, we have some beautiful architecture at the Emollienborg Castle. Can you tell us a bit about what we're looking at here?
Yeah, sure. This is the royal palace, the Emollienborg. You see the yard here, and there consists of 4 buildings: one for the queen, one for the crown prince and his family, one for the prince, second prince, and one for the staff. And so this is where the royal family lives. And behind it, you see the marble church. They are not connected. It's just a very, very nice angle from here. And this is also where the royal guards are operating. It might come a picture with them as well. No? Yeah, there they are. There they are. So this is how my son looked a couple of years ago when he was guarding the royal family. I was very proud, by the way.
Of course,
very, very proud. Yeah.
And so another stop that travelers might make in Copenhagen is the Christianborg Palace. This is a lovely picture here as well.
Very, very lovely picture. And Christianborg Palace was the palace for King Christian IV. But it's been burned down a couple of times. So the building we see here is a little bit more than 100 years old only. Today, it's a political building because it's hosting the government and the parliament there. It's still very, very beautiful to see. To the left with the spire, you see the old stock exchange market. It's not in use anymore today. There are smaller companies based there with their offices. And if you go on a boat ride here in Copenhagen, you will see this as well. It's really, really nice to see. Yeah.
Great. Now, Per, for those of folks that are joining us for and have never traveled on a Go Ahead tour, they might not know that one thing that we do is we have optional trips, side excursions that you can book to customize your tour. I mean, we have one that leaves from Copenhagen to Fredericksburg Castle and Elsinore, and I was hoping you might be able to briefly talk through what that day is like if you do decide to do that excursion.
Sure. If you do this excursion to Fredericksburg and to Elsinore, we start with the bus ride from Copenhagen. Further north, we are driving along something called Strandvej, and it's along the Sound, which is separating Denmark from Sweden. A very, very beautiful road. It's considered to be one of the most scenic ones in the whole country. We reach this Fredericksburg Castle, where we have a local guide waiting for us. And this is a replica from the Versailles. Versailles was copied, I would like to say, a lot in Europe during that time. For example, here at Fredericksburg. And we have a sightseeing tour inside it, and it will be also some time on own before we continue further north up to Elsinore, which is a very cozy town with about 55,000 inhabitants, and that's the nearest point to Sweden. It's only 2 miles, and there are ferry connections between the two countries and between Elsinore and Helsingborg running all the time. And then we go back to Copenhagen again. It's a really, really nice optional excursion. Yes.
Great. Thank you so much for talking us through that. Now, we did get a question from Ruth, and she was asking about free time in Copenhagen. So if you decide that you don't want to do an excursion, you will have to, you will have some more free time. And so we thought that this might be a good opportunity to ask you, who has lived in Copenhagen before, for some tips for what to do with your free time there.
Sure. And I think the first choice should be to go to the Tivoli Garden, the second oldest amusement park in the world. It's dated back to 1858. And it's not only an amusement park, it's also full of maybe 25, 30 restaurants. There are bars, cafeterias, and you have a very, very beautiful flower garden as well here. I should say also that during the shoulder season, it might be closed or limited opening hours, but during the season, well worth to visit both daytime and nighttime. A lot of events also in Tivoli Garden, and really accessible. It's walking distance no matter which hotel we are staying in Copenhagen. Easy to get there. Yes. Bike. Yes. Copenhagen is, the whole infrastructure of Copenhagen is built up around the bikes, and there are more bikes than people in Copenhagen. There are around 2 million people, and many of them have more than one bike. And it's also, once again, I can compare to Amsterdam. They are so easy to get around by bike in Copenhagen, and you can rent it from some hotels, or just around the corner, you might rent it, and it's not too costly, and it's really nice to see Copenhagen like the locals do it. So definitely a good thing to do, a couple of hours, absolutely, yeah. And we have the Botanical Garden, also in the very center of Copenhagen. And if the weather permits, very nice to spend an hour and a half, 2 hours walking around and enjoy the beautiful environment there. Absolutely. It's a beautiful, beautiful garden. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, we did get a question on Facebook from Laura, and she was asking about what food is popular in Scandinavia, and at least in Copenhagen, it looks like this is a really wonderful option.
Oh, yeah, that's right. We saw earlier, I was mentioning earlier, the national meal number 2. This is definitely the national meal number 1. The open-faced sandwiches is called smørrebrød in Danish. And what we see here on the 3 different sandwiches, I think there is herring, and it's some red onion, and it's some salmon as well. This is very, very typical, and that's what the locals are eating for lunch. Not so much for dinner, but for lunch. And if, well, the occasion permits, you have a really good beer together with it and a small bitter. That's really good, and that's what the Danes like. I can definitely recommend you to try open-faced sandwiches, smørrebrød, when you are in Denmark. That it should be like that. Yes.
Oh, wonderful. I love trying things like that, and it looks delicious.
Yes.
So now from here we are moving on to Sweden and Stockholm. So let's talk a little bit about some fast travel facts for Sweden.
Sure. First of all, Sweden is the 4th largest country in Europe, if we see to the surface, and it's the largest country among the Nordic ones, both to the surface and also population-wise. It's around 10.5 million living here. And we have 2 land borders only, one to Norway and one to Finland. And 70% of our surface is covered by forest. And we have some great companies also. I think you heard about Volvo. I think you heard about IKEA, which I mentioned here on the screen. And we have 400,000 moose in our country, which is the most populated moose country on the planet. And I had the pleasure this summer to work as a moose safari guide. It was so exciting. It was so nice. So I know everything about moose. Really, I know everything. And they are wonderful animals. They are wonderful animals.
They are, and that is so cool. What a way to spend a summer.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's talk about Stockholm and some of the sites that folks will see there.
Yes, and what we see here is the old town. Stockholm is built up on 13 different islands, and this is the oldest one. It's called Old Town in English and Gamla stan in Swedish. It's dated back to the 13th and 14th century and further on, and it's right in the center of Stockholm, if I say like that. This is Stortorget, which means the large square, and that is situated on the island of Gamla Stan. And here at this square you also find the Nobel Museum. And what you see here to the right is a very narrow little street between the two yellow buildings. And this is nothing special, what we see. This is very common in Old Town, and we do have it included on our sightseeing tour. Our local guide is walking us around parts of it. It's fantastic. I love Gamla Stan in Stockholm. And this is the City Hall, dated back to the early 20th century. And it's also a very important building because it's where the rest of the Nobel Prizes are awarded. The ceremony is taking place here, for example, literature and economy and so on in December every year. And on top of the building, you can see 3 crowns. Each crown is representing the Scandinavian countries. It's situated on an island called Kungsholm, the King's Island, the second largest island in Stockholm, yes. But all these islands are having bridge connections. This is the Royal Palace in Old Town of Stockholm. It was the royal residence earlier for the family, but they moved out 1981. Today, it's only the King's office. So this is where he works. He commutes every day. He's commuting between his home and this office. Well, maybe not every day, but this is his office. Quite a nice office, Nelson, right?
Yes, yeah, not bad.
Not bad, right.
Now you mentioned that he's staying now in Drottningholm. This is an excursion that folks can also take to go and visit. Can you tell us about that?
Absolutely. This is actually my favorite optional excursion. I just love it. To the right of the building, you see where the royal family lives. When we are coming to Drottningholm, we visit the main part of it. First of all, we go by boat from the center of Stockholm out to Drottningholm. It takes a little bit less than an hour. Then we have a sightseeing tour inside the castle, the palace, with a local guide, and then some free time. And then we go by bus back to Stockholm again. It's around 4 hours. It's so relaxing. It's so impressive. It's just the perfect optional excursion, if you ask me. What we see here also is the garden on the backside of the palace. Also similar to Versailles outside Paris. Yes, really,
I can
really
see
beautiful.
that.
Yeah.
Now in Stockholm, there's also this incredible museum, the Vasa Museum, where we go, and there's this. Can you tell us about this beautifully preserved ship?
Yeah, absolutely. It's very well preserved, but it was underwater for more than 350 years. It was when it was built, and it was 1628. It was put on water, but it was sailing only for 25 minutes before it sank. And then it was under the sea level for, well, almost 350 years. It was salvaged in 1961. Then it took a little bit more than a decade to restore it. And today it's one of maybe the most visited museum in the whole country. It's fantastic. It's so well preserved. It's amazing. And it's really, really nice. And we do have it included on our sightseeing tour.
It's just so
another
cool.
Highlight.
Yeah,
highlight.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Now, another thing that we wanted to note about Stockholm is that in Stockholm there is a very well-developed subway system, and some of the stations, not all of them, some of them have this very beautiful artwork. Now, for our guests, would you recommend getting around by subway if during their free time?
Absolutely. It's a great way of traveling, and it's very easy to travel. I always, with my groups, I have quite a good explanation how to use it, but it's not expensive at all, and sometimes it goes faster than taking a cab, for example. And it's some of them, I want to underline that not all of the stations look like this. It's around 110 of them, but they have tried to do the best out of the stations. And Some of them really, really beautiful, as you can see here. Reminds me a little bit about the subway in Moscow and in St. Petersburg. And
yes.
Tunnelbana is the name in Swedish for subway. Very, very good way of traveling short distances inside our capital. Absolutely. Yeah.
Great. Now, before we leave Sweden, we have to talk about food. So
we have to.
Let's talk about what to eat in Stockholm.
Yes. And what we see here to the left is the Swedish national meal #1. Meatballs served with boiled potato and lingonberry jam. You have to try it. Absolutely. For example, in Gamla Stan, where there are plenty of restaurants serving this great meal. In the middle, we have the Swedish national meal #3, and that is Jello pea soup and Swedish pancakes. The pea soup is served usually with some mustard in, and the pancakes, as you have as a kind of dessert, is served with, I think it's either raspberry or strawberry jam, but it can also be whipped cream on. So Swedish national meal #3. And to the right, a very typical Swedish breakfast, a sandwich where you put hard-boiled slices of egg and also our fantastic Kalles caviar, which is a creamy caviar you put on the egg. This is really something you have to try when you're in Sweden, and you find Kalles caviar on every hotel in the whole country. It's actually mandatory to try it when you are here in Sweden. Yes.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, Per, before we go to Finland, I did want to ask some questions about how we get from place to place. So Marilyn asked, how do you travel between the countries? Do you do it by air or by sea?
Both. Because from Oslo to Copenhagen, from Norway to Denmark, we do it by sea, by night ferry, which is a very convenient way of doing it. And the ferries are really nice. They have a good standard. We have dinner included. There are shops, there are bars, and the cabins are not very large, but they are still convenient enough. And we do the same. But okay, from Copenhagen to Stockholm, from Denmark to Sweden, we are flying, and from Sweden to Finland, from Stockholm to Helsinki, we go with another night ferry, which is really, really something special. There are about 35,000 islands between Stockholm and Helsinki. And also here, the night ferry is great with restaurants, with shops, with nightclubs. And I always encourage my people to stay awake as long as possible, because it's so much to see between Stockholm and Helsinki. Even if it's late in the night, you can still experience these lovely islands you see around you for hours and hours.
Great. Now, Per, we've gotten some more questions about transportation in the ferries. One question came in to us, and the question was from Teresa. She says, are passports required when taking the ferries between countries?
Yes, passports are required nowadays. Before it was enough with ID, but count on that you have to show your passport, yes.
Sure.
Yeah.
And we got another question that was sent in before the presentation began, and this was more in detail about the ferries. Does each traveler have a private berth with their roommate on the night ferries? And does each berth have a window? This question was from Linda.
Yes, it's two times yes on this. They do have the private berth, and it's not luxury, but it's still good enough. With you travel, you stay with your travel company, and there are shower, there are WC, there are wash stand, and it's nice for 1 or 2 nights. Maybe not for a whole cruise, but a week or something. But for 1 or 2 nights, it's fine. And this picture is actually from the ferry between Stockholm and Helsinki, and I would guess that the time for this is around 11:30 p.m.
Wow.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Maybe in June or July.
Sure,
it's really, really nice. Yeah.
Now I see what you mean by staying up as late as possible to see the
Correct.
islands you're passing by, because the sun will be out. Or
That's
well,
right.
in the summertime at least.
Yes.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, from there, let's move on to Finland, and we're going to land in Helsinki. But let's talk about some Finland fast facts.
Yes, Finland is also very full of forest, but also many lakes. It's called the the country of 1,000 lakes, probably more than that. And the capital is Helsinki. It's also quite a large country, but not very populated, around 5 million, almost like Norway. And bordering 3 countries, bordering Sweden, Norway, and Russia. And 2 official languages. Finnish is spoken by most of the people, 93–94% has it as a mother tongue. And Finnish is very, very far away from the Scandinavian language. It's related to the Estonian language, and far, far away also related to Hungarian language. About 6–7% of the population has Swedish as the mother tongue. Yes.
And so when we arrive in Helsinki, looking at this beautiful architecture, can you tell us about what we're looking at this picture here?
Yes, this is the Helsinki Cathedral we see here, this white building, and it's on a square called the Senate Square. And this picture is taken from you can see from the seaside, and we see the open air market in front of us, where you can buy food and you can buy souvenirs and so on. But this is the very, very center of Helsinki, yes.
And speaking of architecture, we also visit this very unique looking church. What is the name of this church and what does it mean?
Well, we call it the Rock Church, and it's was built in the early 1960s. It's actually built inside a rock, as you can see. And the acoustic inside is fantastic. And we are getting in there during our sightseeing tour, and we are happy. It might be somebody rehearsing because the sound is amazing in there. So it's quite a modern church, also very much in the center of Helsinki, but we do have it included there.
And speaking of beautiful sounds, we have this park. Can you tell us about this park here? And
yes, it's called the Sibelius Park, and it's of course named after the great composer Sibelius. And the pipes we see here, it's symbolizing, of course, what he was standing for. This is situated a little bit outside Helsinki, but we still have it included in our sightseeing tour. And it's an amazing area, beautiful, absolutely.
Wonderful, Per. Well, thank you so much for taking us through that. We're going to get into some of the questions that we have here, and so we have a few that we've loaded up that we got before the presentation began. I'm going to ask you some of those, but I'm also going to ask you some that have been submitted during the presentation.
Sure.
So the first question is, what should I pack for a trip from Scandinavia?
Well, okay, that's a good question. I get it quite often. Maybe you should pack an umbrella or a raincoat in case it's raining a little bit in Bergen or somewhere else. It could be, if it's a shoulder season, it could be nice to have maybe a sweater or an extra jacket when in the evening time. Sure. The rest is actually just the regular things. I can't really say too much that you need any special. It's quite civilized countries we are coming to. So if you need something, you can always get it on tour, so to speak. Yeah.
Wonderful. Now, this question was from Helen. What are unique items for purchase in the region, and any unique jewelry, and where's the best to go shopping?
Well, if you're in Helsinki, you have the chance to go on a full-day optional excursion to Estonia and to the capital of Tallinn, and there you can buy a lot of nice amber. It's a little bit of a specialty for Estonia, but you can find amber as well in Helsinki. If you're in Sweden, you should definitely buy a Dala horse. I don't know if people can see it, but this is a little bit symbol of, well, it's one of the most typical Swedish items we have, and it's from a county called Dalarna in Swedish. It's translated, it's called the valleys, and you find these Dala horse in, for example, the souvenir stores in Old Town. Very nice, different colors, different sizes. This is a very small one, but it's very typical Swedish souvenir. In Norway, you can buy a sweater. It's called lusekofta, very, very special pattern. very good for winter use, I would like to say. And if you are in Denmark, there are plenty of jewelry stores. Denmark is well known for gold and diamonds, for example. And maybe you should have a small souvenir showing the Little Mermaid. I don't know, but something like that. Yeah.
Now we did get a question from Vivian. She asked, when is the best time to see the Northern Lights?
I'm so sorry, Vivian. Wrong season and wrong part of the Nordic countries. We don't see the Northern Light at all. If you want to see the Northern Light, you should go up to northern Finland, Sweden, or Norway in December. That's all I can say. So we are not touching the Northern Lights. I'm so sorry.
Well, what I would say is that if you are really interested in see the Northern Lights, we do have a tour to Iceland, and those all take place in the wintertime. So, and those that are intended to see the Northern Lights. So if you want to see the Northern Lights, we do have tours to Iceland where there are excursions that we have specifically to get you outside to try and see those. So, so if you are interested in that, I can recommend those. So, let's talk a little bit more about some questions that we've gotten during the presentation, pairs. So let's see. So when we were talking about the Stave Church, someone wrote in and asked, is it Lutheran, or what type of church is the Stave Church? Is there a specific congregation that uses it, or is it even still used?
Oh, that was a very, very
a lot of questions,
difficult question. Well, it's not Lutheran, because Lutheran came after the Viking era. I assume it's more of a Catholic churches, the history, but I'm not a specialized in that. So, but definitely not Lutheran, because that came later on. Yeah.
Sure. And so we have a question from Peter. And he's asking about how much time will be on buses, and he asks about the amount of walking on tour as well.
Okay, well, we don't really have any long bus tours on this tour. We do have some busing in when we do the Norway in a Nutshell Day, sure, but not longer than an hour and a half without break. And because we don't do any bus transportations between the cities at all, we fly or we go by ferry. That's it. Walking, well, usually when I have time, if the time allows, I take people on walking tour in the different cities, but it's not really long tours, not really long, and it's not a long, it's not too much walking, but it's also optionals. I mean, optional possibilities to go on walking tours with me or whoever is tour director. But I don't want to say it's too much of walking. It's quite, when we go to, we have included in Bergen, we have included the Trollhaugen, the summer house of Edvard Grieg. And there is maybe 2 times half a mile. So a mile totally we walk between the bus and the summer house, yes.
Sure. So I have a question here. Let's see what one should we go with. And is there any kind of typical food that one might encounter in Finland? Because we didn't talk about that.
No, we didn't talk too much about that, but a lot of reindeer, which is well worth to try. Reindeer and moose, my lovely, lovely moose, but you can still eat it as well. Yeah, that's it. A lot of the wild meat, and also you have, of course, all the countries are having a lot of seafood because we have so much water around us, both the North Sea and the Baltic Sea. So it's definitely a seafood area. Yeah.
Great. And let's see. Oh, so this is a question I can answer. Or actually, no, I'll put this to you. So when we do have the flights during the tour, how early do you tend to get to the airport for those kind of flights with the group?
2 hours before, usually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's typical.
Yeah, it's typical. And we could go later, but I don't want to risk anything. It has to be, anything can go. Something can go wrong during the check-in and so on. So we have to have 2 hours. So usually we if it's half an hour to the airport, we leave 2 hours and a half before the flight departure. Yeah.
Sure. So let's see. Is the Vasa Museum included on the excursion to Drottningholm, or is that something that's separate from the optional excursion to Drottningholm?
Did you ask about the Vasa Museum?
Yes.
Yeah, that's included on the sightseeing tour, but Drottningholm is an optional.
Sure. So the Vasa Museum is included even if you don't do the excursion to Drottningholm.
That's correct.
All right, let's see. Now, this is a question. I don't know the answer to this one. Let's see. How far will we be from Dalarna? Is it possible to take a bus there?
Not really. I wish, because I like that county so much, and I've been working there also a couple of years ago. But to take a train, for example, from Stockholm up to where they are making these Dala horses, it would take 5 hours maybe. Yeah.
Sure.
So it can't really be included, unfortunately.
So I also got a question about Uppsala. Does the tour go to Uppsala, or is that not part of the itinerary?
No, but we do have, we didn't mention that, but we do have an optional to Uppsala. It's half a day, and it's usually the same day as we have the sightseeing tour. We have the sightseeing tour in the morning, then lunch break in Gamla stan, usually, and then we go to Uppsala, where we have a local guide showing us the cathedral and the old university area, and whatever is accessible. It's really, I lived in Uppsala also, so I know that where I was studying at the university. It's a fantastic city. It's the 4th largest in Sweden, and it takes about an hour by bus from Stockholm to Uppsala. Yeah.
Sure. So we still getting some more questions in here. So a question from Peter: how much free time do you have in each city to enjoy the culture and food?
A little bit different, but in Bergen, you will have at least half a day after the sightseeing tour. In Oslo, maybe 2-3 hours, maybe. In Copenhagen, you can have a day and a half on your own if you don't join the optional. In Stockholm, you can also have a day and a half if you don't join the optionals. Yes. Helsinki, full day if you don't go on the optional to Estonia. Yeah.
Sure. This is another question. Does the tour visit Suomenlinna? I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. Or do group members go there independently?
Not a bad pronunciation, Nelson.
Thank you.
Respect. Suomenlinna, if we should be correct, is also in Sveaborg in Swedish. It's a very, very nice fortress island outside Helsinki. It takes about 20 minutes by boat. We don't have it included, but you can still do it the afternoon after the sightseeing tour. Or if you don't go to Estonia, you can do it that day. Well worth. I really like Suomenlinna.
So that's a good free time suggestion for Helsinki.
Absolutely.
Wonderful.
Absolutely, yeah.
So we've gotten a number of questions about St. Petersburg, because I should mention that on this tour, we often have an option to extend your tour and to go to St. Petersburg. But am I correct that if we do that there'll be a separate tour director in St. Petersburg? Is that typical?
That's right. That tour director is usually meeting up in Helsinki and bring the group. It's a train ride for 3 hours and a half between Helsinki and St. Petersburg. So the Russian tour director is taking over the group.
Sure.
So we say hello to each other in Helsinki, and we say goodbye to each other in Helsinki. That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
So I got a question here about, or a few questions about that. Like, one of them was, what are unique items for purchase if you do the extension to St. Petersburg? Is that something that you feel you could talk about, or is that something that you don't know that?
Well, I've been in the past. We did Helsinki. We did St. Petersburg as well, and well, there are these dolls you buy in St. Petersburg. If we talk about what you can purchase there, the dolls inside each other, smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller.
Yes.
That's something very typical. But they do sell a lot of amber items as well in St. Petersburg, and a lot of clothes, and it's really from a price wise, it's really low cost in St. Petersburg. Yeah.
Great.
So
I do see a question from Linda that I can answer, and she said, "Is a visa needed in St. Petersburg?" And the answer is yes. In order to visit St. Petersburg, you would need to get a visa from the Russian government.
That's right.
So let's see. Oh, this is a good question. This is from Ronnie, and she asks, why is the ferry to Finland, why does that not take place during the day? Why is it a night ferry if it's so scenic?
Well, I can tell you that because there are no day ferries between Stockholm and Helsinki. All are night ferries. So that's the reason. And it's basically for the Swedes and for the Finnish people to do it. They do it like a mini vacation. So they take a weekend. So they stay 2 nights on board and then have a time of 6-7 hours in respective city there. So that's the reason. There are no day ferries between Stockholm and Helsinki. That's right.
Right. So all right, let's see. So there's a question about the COVID requirements do change often, and at this point is asking about how countries have handled like testing with the ferries and changing between countries. But at this point, we haven't actually run any tours in Scandinavia to date, so it's not something that we've been handling so far.
No, yeah. That's right. Right.
But we are optimistic that in the coming months that will be something that we do. But one thing I can tell you is that as far as working with you to help make sure that you're aware of all the requirements, that is something that we are doing for the destinations that we are traveling to. So we're sharing a lot of information, especially through the online account and the app that will have all of the information about your entry requirements. So that is something that we can help keep you up to date on. So Per, this is a question about hotels, and I know we've talked a lot about night ferries, but what should a traveler expect the accommodations to be like?
Well, usually our accommodation are 3+ or 4-star hotels, and you should expect a relatively good standard of the hotels, most of the time centrally located. What you shouldn't expect, which might be a problem sometimes, is that most of the hotels don't have air condition. And because the heat, when I talk about 90-95 degrees, it's usually maybe 25-30 days a year if we are lucky/unlucky. So, but most of the hotels try to provide the guests with the fans instead, so it helps a little bit. But I've been in a few situations where also they were running short of fans, and so it can be. So we are not used to this warm weather,
Sure.
really. But I also want to underline that some hotels definitely have also air condition, and we of course we try to do our best and pick the best hotels for our clients. Sure.
Great. So we had a traveler that was asking about, so there's sort of 2 questions in here. So I'll ask the first one. Apparently there are these artists that did a Canadian indigenous carved totem pole that's in Sweden. Are you familiar with this? Have you heard about this?
Well, I heard about it, but I'm not familiar with that. And I really don't want to go into an answer because I don't have the knowledge enough for that. No, sorry about that.
Do you know where it is or no?
No, I don't know where it is.
Okay, fair enough.
No.
But the same questioner also said that they're very interested in art galleries. I know that we talked about the Munch Museum. Are there other opportunities on this tour to visit art galleries?
Absolutely. All the cities have their art galleries in Bergen, Oslo, Copenhagen, Stockholm, and Helsinki. And there are many opportunities to go to art galleries in all the cities, I would like to say. So, and apart from Oslo, the other cities, there are time for that. Yes.
Wonderful.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So you mentioned this briefly before, but I wanted to ask you about it again. Elise asks, which optional activity is your favorite?
My favorite is Drottningholm, no doubt about it. I know that usually many of my colleagues are saying all of them are nice, and they are nice, but my personal favorite is Drottningholm in Stockholm. That's for sure. Absolutely. I love that excursion. I do.
Wonderful. And I got a question from Ronnie. She asks, isn't there a glass factory in Sweden?
Yes, there is a glass factory in Sweden, but not close to Stockholm as far as I know. It's actually close to where I live here in the southern part of Sweden, but we won't be able to come nearby. No, not the factory. Of course, there are many glass stores in Stockholm, absolutely, especially in
sure.
Old Town, but we won't come near. Well, up. There is, I have to say something now, there is an open air museum in Stockholm called Skansen on the island of Djurgården, and there they have a small workshop with glassblower in the summer. Absolutely. So sorry, I just remember that now. Very well, nice to visit. And that museum, that open air museum, it's fantastic. It's really, really great. They have collected buildings from the 16th and 17th century there from all over Sweden. There is also a zoological part with moose, with reindeer, with bear, with wolves. Also really, really nice to visit. And out on that island, sorry, I'm coming into something else now, but out on that island, we also have ABBA, the museum, where you can sing along with the superstars from ABBA, Mamma Mia.
Oh yeah.
So on. Yeah. It's also very nice. It's the same island as the Vasa Ship Museum is on. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Per, well, it looks like we've gone through our questions for today. And so with that, I do want to remind our guests about some upcoming webinars that we do have available. And you can find all of this at goaheadtours.com/webinars. But on Tuesday, October 12th, we're going to be doing a Facebook Live event. And this is very interesting. It's going to be My Travel Experience Morocco. So in these My Travel Experience series on Facebook, we have folks that have recently returned from their tours come on and talk to us about their experience traveling with Go Ahead. Then the next Tuesday, we'll have a similar event, but this time focusing on Kenya. Then on November 2nd, we'll be doing a destination spotlight, similar to what we've done here today, but during that session, we're going to be focusing on Italy. Very exciting. And then on the 9th of November, we'll be shining our spotlight on Greece before going to the UK and Ireland for our destination spotlight on November 16th. Per, I want to thank you again for joining us. It was a lot of fun to talk about Scandinavia and the Nordic countries with you. Do you have any parting words for our guests before we say goodbye?
I do. Thank you so much for listening to me, and thank you very much for participating during this webinar. And please come over to this part of Europe. We miss you so much. We miss you, and we really would like to show this wonderful part of Europe for you. So you're more than welcome to come with Go Ahead Tours over to here. I'm ready for you. I'm waiting for you. That's my message. That's my message.
Well, thank you, Per. We really appreciate that. And to all of you who joined us today, we thank you again for joining us. And until we see you again, we'll say safe travels. And we look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you.